I am absolutely delighted today to have one of my favorite humans with us, Kathleen Murphy. Kathleen's full bio will be in the show notes, but I will say a few things about Kathleen. One of the greatest allies to the LGBTQ plus community. I'm excited to have an ally on. She's also the chief clinical officer at Friendly House in LA. She's a clinical supervisor at Onsite Workshops, still affiliated with Breathe, where she's been for many, many years. Welcome to the LMFT podcast. I'm your host, TJ Woodward, and I'm thrilled to have you join us for this empowering journey. Each week, we shine a light on the authors, thought leaders, therapists, coaches, and healers of all types who are making a difference in the LGBTQ plus community. Together, we honor those who came before us, the courageous and resilient trailblazers who stood for our rights and recognition. Their strength laid the foundation we stand on today. Here, we celebrate their legacy by diving into the stories, insights, and tools that inspire gentleness, healing, and transformation. So get ready to be uplifted and empowered. This is the LMFT podcast. I'm excited to dive in. So Kathleen, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Really, I'm so excited. I love that this is, we're just going to get to have this conversation and see where it goes. And, anytime that we get to talk about healing and maybe what helps, it's what a treat. Isn't this your favorite subject?
It is truly my favorite subject. And I remember the first time you and I met, really met, we were in San Francisco and we sat together at a dinner because we were presenting together. This was many years ago. And I just fell in love with you, your passion, and your commitment to this conversation. And not only the conversation of healing, but the actual practice of it. And of course, today's conversation is about the LGBTQ plus community. I know you've had decades of experience working with our community. I think it's really important to have the ally voice on this podcast. So when you think about your work and your work with the alphabet soup community, we'll call it that, tell me a little bit about your passion for it, what draws you to it, and what has been your experience of helping people heal.
So glad you're asking me this question, because it's a question I ask myself all the time too. Because it's easy to go, wow, I'm allied with this group, but why?
Yeah.
But why? What's calling me here? What is it about me that is being revealed about me, right? And how I just got to tell you that I really recall the first group that I got to work with gay men. It was when I worked at Caron, at Breakthrough at Caron. And TJ, this just happened to be during, do you remember when this thing was going to happen? What was it? The second coming, the rapture. That's what it was called, the rapture.
Okay.
The rapture. And so I thought, I'm going to do this group. I was invited. There was a quarterly weekend workshop for men, gay men who were suffering with HIV. And I was invited, and I came, and my passion subject is inherent worth and value. That's just my passion. It's almost like I feel like a one-trick pony. I only teach this, right? And so I was going to this group, and I knew some of the guys because they had been through Breakthrough. And I thought, where else can I wear my rapture outfit just in case, So I wore this white flowy garb. and we had so much fun with that. What stood out for me first was the welcoming that I received about this message of inherent worth and value during this, rapturous time. And so we got to have this fun with the angelic suit. No straight person would have engaged with me. And as it turns out, it's like bringing a message of inherent worth and value, which is to people who have been taught that their worth and value was up for debate, that was negotiable. I mean, I think that we're all taught that in some way, but through churches and institutions, and that idea that your inherent worth and value is up for debate, I have that. But it's like I could see it because there's yeah, I went to church and I was told that I was a sin against God when I was trying to get close to God. And maybe I wasn't told that specifically for that same reason, but I knew what it felt like to be told that somehow or another you are a shame or a blight on existence.
Mm.
And so that really gave me my entryway into hearing this sound of disconnection and the longing and the deep, deep longing for connection. So that's
Yeah, and when I'm hearing you and listening to you, I'm actually feeling that in my body, which is what I always experience when I'm with you, because we take this deep dive and get down to the actual root of the matter. And I know, Kathleen, you know, in my work, I identify the root causes of addiction as unresolved trauma, spiritual disconnection, and toxic shame. And as you're talking about inherent worth, I mean,
yeah,
inherent. Right. We
inherent.
come into the world absolutely knowing our wholeness and our perfection. An infant, a baby doesn't come into the world with even the cognitive ability to question that, but we are so susceptible, right? And if we are in family systems where we're told something's wrong with us, and then as you said, add to it that this idea of God somehow says you're broken or inherently flawed. And as you said, a lot of humans get that, not just LGBTQ folks. But when I work with LGBTQ folks, it seems like we all have received that on some level, even if it was never said directly to us.
That's
I
right.
grew up in a family system, and actually, believe it or not, I grew up in a religious system that was very accepting. My first gay role models were at church, out gay people in the 70s in Indiana. So, how lucky am I? But then I went to school,
Absolutely.
right? Then I went to
Yeah.
school, and it
Then you
was
went to
like,
school. Yeah.
right. And these messages that there's something fundamentally wrong with me became the operating system of my life.
Love how you call that the operating system. Like, so it's like, because that implies that it's operating underneath awareness, right? Because an operating system isn't what we're looking at right now, right? When we're talking through our screens, but what's allowing us to do that is a certain operating system that is, we can't see, but is in fact framing. We wouldn't even be here without it, right? But it's everywhere and nowhere at the same time, which makes it hard to notice.
That's right. And that's why the healing that needs to take place isn't about only what we can see, touch, taste, and experience in what we call relative reality or through the five senses. In other words, we have to get beyond just the symptoms and behaviors, right? Whether it's addiction, whether it's someone coming into a spiritual path, there's this sense of, I keep trying all of this, but there's something deeper within me that seems to be replicating the same thing over and over again. And for me, I wasn't even aware of that for my first decade
Right.
of recovery. Like I had an intellectual concept of that, like, oh, I must have some things going on deep within me because I keep choosing these same men over and over and over again.
At least as if you were choosing,
As
because you,
yeah,
as if you were choosing,
that's right.
like, because I like, again, you said the word replicating,
Yes.
right? Like when there's like cancer is the over replication of cells, right? And it's like, oh, it's replicating. It's not that I'm choosing it. Like the operating system, we're not choosing it. We're just clicking on a button, but we don't understand that despite my best efforts, despite, like going to therapy and, oh, okay, I'm going to think positive, that there's something deeper that's recreating and reenacting situations and scenarios. Yeah. I think what you're saying is super powerful.
Yeah, and that's where you and I meet, right? Because it's not a conscious choice. I don't think anyone wakes up. You know, we've worked with a lot of clients over the years.
Yeah.
They might say, I have this condition of anxiety or I'm
Yeah.
suffering from depression. And I think when we understand that that's managing something deeper and that deeper piece is unconscious, it's not like anyone wakes up and says, oh, please make today the most anxious day possible. Or please let me choose another person who's unavailable for me, or let me choose a job where I feel unsatisfied. I love that you're leaning into that because no, it's not a conscious choice, but that operating system, as we've said, is replicating that. So, of course, here's the $1 million question. How do we begin to shift and heal that?
Well, you know what? I want to ask you a question about something
Yeah.
because, I've been thinking about this because when I think about inherent worth and value, okay, like, so before we go into this piece,
Yeah.
I've come across some people that when I've said this, I've received, surprisingly gotten some, pushback or backlash, because I have this idea that even though I was a person that was born into a system where I was hit, where, there was sexual assault, all these things happen, that I believe that there's a part of me that has never been touched by any of it. That piece is, that's when I say inherent, like the when I think about like, oh, how old am I? Or how old are you? It's like I'm infinite.
Yes.
I'm I'm living inside a body that's situated in a context, in an epoch in time, right? So, and those teachings that I learned, oh, if you're a girl that acts out sexually, then you're a whore,
Yeah.
right? And then, or if if I was a black woman in the 60s or 50s, oh, you're a black little girl and you can't go to school,
That's right.
right? But what I think to myself, this is the culture teaching you who you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. But I still hold that regardless of the teachings or the lies of the culture, that there's a part of us that is never touched,
That's right.
that our
And
spirits aren't damaged.
this is where you and I meet, and this is the thing I'm most excited about because in my model
Really?
conscious recovery, I call it an essential self, and you're calling it the inherent self, right? And
Yeah.
I would say there's a place within me that's unharmed and unharmable, and then
Mhm.
you're having a slightly different language, but we're
But we're in the same page.
that's right. And the reason this is so important is most clinical models, most recovery groups miss this piece or don't quite acknowledge it because we say things like our client isn't ready to work on this trauma or our client isn't ready or I'm not ready or don't worry about that. I was told that in early recovery, don't worry about anything but not drinking. Well, and then I said, but I literally just told you I'm suicidal, and that's your answer, right? So when we lean into the inherent or the essential perfection that exists within each of us as the starting point, then healing looks really different because I'm not trying to fix someone who's broken, myself or my client. I am exploring with I'm being co-curious with a client or a human or a friend or
Oh,
myself
curious. I love
about
that.
how we access that place within us. And then healing is a very different conversation.
See, like, I'm so glad that we're talking about this because even as an ally in the community, this is like when I understand that there has been wounding, to folks that were told, hey, you're not allowed to exist,
Yeah.
or, coming to understand, oh my gosh, I'm living in the wrong body, but who is it that's living in the body? And what I have found, not all the time, but enough of the time for me to stop and go, do I have a right to say that?
Mhm.
Do I have a right to say, I believe, even though I understand that you have been viscerally wounded? And of course, I don't understand. I don't know what it's to be a Black girl in America. I don't know what it is to be a trans person. I don't know what it is. There are many different ways that I don't know the specifics of the mechanisms of certain kinds of harms, right? But what I do know is what it is to be taught that I'm supremely defective and that my whole recovery, like I even think in when we're training clinicians, right? We start with a mental health. Well, what is the mental and the health? Loving oneself. What is that? We don't even take a pause to begin to even look at, love in the Buddhist frame of mind. It's like not self. This is not self,
Right.
right? This is my thoughts, not self. They're not saying no self, not self.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that I'm sensitive too, because I understand that when I say that we have inherent worth and value and that even though you may have been brutalized, hurt, told you don't belong, and all of those things, I am not denying or my own pain or your pain, but I'm still advocating for, hey, just like the blacks in the cotton fields, oh, you can beat me up, but you cannot take away my right to generate and create music because that's mine, and it can't be taken from me because I have something that is bigger than what you are doing.
Wow. And what you're speaking to, Kathleen, is so important. So I want to pause for a moment and really
Okay.
lean into this because it's a very nuanced and very crucial conversation at this juncture in humanity. Because what you're not saying, and what I don't hear you saying is a
Okay.
denial of the wounding,
No.
saying we honor and respect and hold that while
Yeah.
also holding a deeper reality. And I want to share
Yes.
it from my own story because I share this story often, but this to me is the essence of what you're saying. And tell me if this is accurate. So
Okay.
when I got
Yeah.
sober, I felt damaged and broken and messed up. And I did not, if you would have told me, if I would have been listening to you at 2 months sober, I would have been like, well, I would have pushed that away. But I
Yes.
met a woman named Mary Helen, beautiful
Mm.
Texas woman, who had this back in the day in Texas, they had the accent still, right? So
Yeah, they did.
yeah. And she would say to me, I know you're from Texas. That's why I'm saying that. She would say to me, darling, you're so precious. And
Oh,
well, almost every part of my being rejected that because it
like
was
would cringe, right?
I would cringe. I would literally feel sick to my stomach, but there was something in her viewing me. And this is what's important. It wasn't
Oh,
what she said to me. She wasn't teaching me about inherent wholeness. She might have been saying those words, but it was her energy field, her viewing me as something that I had believed that I had lost access to, created a bit of curiosity. And so she was not denying the sexual trauma I had or the like overt homophobia I experienced in the world or what it was like to constantly be told, don't look like a girl, don't talk like a girl, don't act like a girl, don't walk like a girl. I mean, before homophobia, it was misogyny, right? And I remember just thinking, what's wrong with being a girl? But I did absorb all of that. And so her witnessing me started to create curiosity for myself. And I started to think things like, she's the most beautiful, loving, kind person I've ever met. And if
mm,
she sees me as precious, who am I not to? Or I wonder what might happen if I were to start embracing that.
I love that. Like I think you're saying a couple of really incredibly powerful things. Because what I hear you saying is it was the way that she was holding you in her mind.
Yes.
She held, it's not exactly the words, but she held you in her mind as precious.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and so what followed from that is you're saying, it's almost like I can even feel my head tilt if I'm you. It's like, wait, what? Um, and then it's not like that you began to, like I hear some people saying this sometimes, like, okay, practice being curious. It's not that you practice being curious. It was her holding you in her mind evoked naturally a state of curiosity, not a thing that you do as some nouveau practice. Practice curiosity. No, because it's a state that emerges from the state of love, from true love. I'm not talking about fear masqueraded as love. And then a new question emerged from you, which said, if she sees me like this, who am I to? Is it I did? Right? Like that's like profound what you're saying. Right?
And this is why when I do clinical trainings, it's not a teaching.
It can't be.
It can't be because how does one teach someone? And I kind of have some answers or some
I'm
questions.
listening.
How does one teach someone what true presence and love is? And in a clinical setting, are we even allowed to frame it that way? Right. And so what we do is we actually experience that with one another. And in that beholding, there is so much emotion that comes up because as you were talking about the head tilt, I was going back to my 20-year-old self, my 21-year-old self who felt so damaged and broken. And even in the curiosity, and I love that you said it wasn't that I was practicing it, it was that it started to emerge within me. Who am
It's a
I?
genuine state.
As a genuine state. And what happened, Kathleen, is a rush of emotion. And that rush of emotion was a combination of years of sadness, of the trauma and the wounding, and also a deeper awareness that there is still this place that's unharmed and unharmable. And where those two met was this profound shift in my life that changed the trajectory of how I saw myself and the world. And that has become my life's work because I understand that it's not what we're saying or doing as much as it is how we're beholding someone.
Oh, we're beholding. I love that. Behold. Like reclaiming that word, right?
That's
Well,
right.
I mean, honestly, it's like, um, oh, uh, the other thing I just really I just am like so profoundly grateful to have this conversation and to tune in at this level. Because I was thinking, are we even allowed, you said, are we even allowed to be in that kind of presence? And sometimes I think I think that when we're thinking that our clients owe us a transformation or something, that it gets very difficult. And I saw myself the other day, I was on a Zoom call with this amazing Black man that I get to work with. And he had, suffered a pretty big uh, physical illness that really changed his life. And it's taken him 2 years to allow himself to be in grief because sometimes we're such in the capitalist matrix of turn every pain into productivity, turn every pain into an Instagrammable moment. And I and 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 as I was listening to him and I could hear the sound of the depth of his grief, because often it's very hard to hold for people like, yes, I'm grateful for all of this. And I'm also in grief and mourning. And, what presence is not is, oh, but look at what you have. That is not
Right,
presence,
right.
right? I just want to demonstrate what that is not presence. Fixing it, making it better than what it is, making it worse than what it is, interpreting it, right? Um, it's simply, and I saw the part of myself when he was expressing the depth of his mourning, wanting, where's my book? How can I saw, and I had to check myself to go, no, I do not need to know what to do here.
Mm,
What I need, or what he needs, is for me to do exactly what Mary, is that what was her name
Mary
again?
Helen,
Mary
Southern,
Helen.
two names, have to have two.
Mary Helen, to hold him with preciousness and spaciousness in my being, not trying to fix anything, not trying to not trying to hurry it, not trying to slow it down, nothing, pure presence.
Well, and you're saying it so much that is so wise, and I want to kind of go down a couple of different pathways. I
Okay.
know you and I have had conversations publicly and privately about sometimes, and I'll put it in the eye, sometimes I want to be the hero in someone's story. And when I decide I want to be the hero in someone's story, I'm no longer truly present. I'm
Oh,
in a subtle or sometimes not so subtle mode of unconsciously Maybe it's my operating system saying this person's broken and I get to be the hero. And that I get to be the hero shows up as I have a suggestion or an idea for you. And I want to be really clear. I think a lot of us have learned not to offer that. There are still clinicians who say, does that make you feel sad? Which I think is one of the worst things we could possibly say, or say, I'm so sorry, which is another thing we wouldn't want to say. But we have maybe learned to not say it. But am I in my energy field, which is what I hear you saying, in my energy field, do I have an impulse to shift this person's experience of
Bingo.
now? And when I'm
Bingo. You
in
say all the
truth,
right things to the
right,
thousand.
right. And so,
But like AA says it, I think really beautifully. We cannot transmit what we do not have.
that's right.
So I add to that. So therefore, we are transmitting what we do have. So we can know all the right things to say or not say. But if it's inauthentic,
Mm.
it'd be better to say, "Gosh, I'm noticing that when I hear you suffer, I'm noticing my own reaction to your suffering."
Yeah, my own impulse.
Yeah, like I'm noticing my own impulse to want to, offer solace
Yeah.
or something. And it's like, yeah, thank you. And what I really would like from you, Kathleen, is to be heard.
Yeah.
Not right. And as it gets tricky in the therapeutic arena. Yeah.
Yeah, and what we're speaking to is where true transformation happens, not because I'm the one providing transformation, but because I'm dedicated to that presence, because I know that the person has the inherent wisdom to
Hmm.
create their own questions. I was going to say
Yeah.
answers, but it's really more create their own
I
questions.
love that
But
question. Yeah.
the paradox, of course, is they're either in treatment or in an office or in a community because they realize that they want some sort of support or help. And
Hmm.
so then I get to ask myself the question, who am I here to be? Who am I
Hmm.
here to be with this human, this spiritual being, this essential, perfect being, while honoring all the wounding that brought them to this chair?
Here's what happened to me when I just heard you say that, a couple of things.
Okay.
Well, I thought, but there is a way that people do give us power. And I
Yes.
remember a teacher saying this. It's like we are being called to show up in a maybe a disruptive conversation.
Mm,
So I remember this teacher when I wanted to be very egalitarian when I was working at the shelter. And what I what I didn't understand was that when people give you power, and people will and do, if you're in a position of leadership, and if you're saying that you're a coach or a teacher, or a preacher, you are in a position of leadership. There is power that is given to you. And if you deny it, you will abuse it,
mm,
right? Because it's like if I tell you if we're friends and we're hanging out and I tell you to F off, right? That would be very different than if I told my client the same thing, right? Because there's a space that they're coming to me. And I think in our culture that we have done away with the idea that need we do need heroes. And I think this is why there's a celebrity worship culture, right? Because sometimes I do think that we need people that will stand kind of like that Statue of Liberty. Is liberty possible, right? And to make sure that we're holding that power or that hope that is given to us with honor. And I'm going to tell you, as an ally, I haven't always known how to do that.
mm,
Um, I haven't always known, I remember one person said to me when Pride was happening. This is some years ago, and I was in Santa Monica and I was watching this joyous celebration. This is pre-COVID. And I came back and I was closing up Family Week, and a person who hadn't identified themselves, and we weren't really asking questions then. This is like, I'm just talking 2019, 2018. And the person said, "You don't even know," and they said it with this level of intensity, "how pride started, do you? You should know." And I felt in that moment like, and we're winding down, and suddenly it opened this whole can of worms. And the truth is, I felt like, whoops, shots are being fired, like that feeling, and not really knowing how to attend to that. And it's like, it's true, I do now. I promise I'll never forget that. But that, the part of me that comes up with, I'm trying to be an ally here. Why are you, that part,
Right.
right? Like really having to work through that too. Like, I just want to, like having to really address and go, wow, look at that feeling that is coming up with you. Um, and what is that about me, that is arising, and really learning how to become an ally, when I can ask questions, when it's not appropriate. When am I asking somebody to do, as a phrase, and I don't hear this so much lately, but when am I asking somebody else to do my labor, my emotional labor? And really, as I'm willing to do that work, because not because I'm virtuous, it has nothing to do with that. It has because I have been so enriched in my life, by I don't even know how to describe it, honestly. I have just been enriched. And I wish that I had the words of poets to say, but to a depth of my soul, that I'm a better person, that I understand myself and humanity, and I am for a cause of liberation in all its forms. But that
Wow.
means I have to stretch myself too.
Yeah. I'm just so moved by everything you're saying and that willingness to look. And going back to something you said about power. I think it's really important to acknowledge, and I agree that we don't often acknowledge it. And I'm thinking about David Hawkins' book, Power versus Force,
Yes,
right?
that's
And
right.
the exploration of the difference of that.
Yeah.
And I
I
think,
have that book right here. You know
oh,
that?
that's so amazing.
That's so
Of
crazy.
course you do. But I think about like what we've been taught is powerful in our culture actually is a weakness showing up as force. And we see that running rampant in the world. But to be
Yeah.
in true
Today we do.
power,
This
yeah,
day,
this
down
day,
in downtown
right?
LA, right?
Right. So this very day, and then we see the reaction to that, and then we see what happens because of that, right? And however you frame it, one side says this one's the one, it's all of that. But to stand in our power, our true power, and I think as we kind of move toward the end of the conversation, believe it or not, even though I could talk to
Oh
you for
my
another
goodness.
2 hours,
I could too. Yeah.
absolute invitation to come back for sure. I think about the true power for me is to know, not intellectually, but to understand deeply. And this might sound paradoxical, but to know my own essential worthy, my
Yes.
own essential worth, my own well-being, my own essential wholeness in that scenario. Because if I don't know that for me, I can't possibly know that for you. And that is standing in power.
Oh, yeah, it can't be said better than that. I mean, honestly, I had a great mentor at Onsite, the CEO there named Julie. And, one of the things that she taught me has something to do with this. She said, Kathleen, when you stand, when you begin to second guess yourself, because there's a difference between having curiosity and second guessing. Oh my God, did that, that's very different. And she's like, when you show up and you just claim that you know what you know, right? And you do take a stand, even if it's not correct, like this is controversial, is that, but if you're standing behind or beside what you're saying, that you don't have to force your point of view on someone,
That's right.
right? But when you're doubtful and when you're trying to get your worth and value by being right or whatever, then she said, you can see the nervous anxiety, because there's a calm that comes with power. Like that's not power over, but power with.
Mhm.
Then force is always the power over and trying to prove something. Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
Like, and usually it's trying to prove inherent worth.
Yeah, it's
I'm
interesting.
worthwhile.
I don't know
Yeah.
why this story is coming to mind, and I don't think I've ever told this story, but my friend Lisa, this is back in the 80s, when I first got sober, and she was a teacher in the Plano school system, which is north of Dallas, and Dallas is a fairly progressive place that I absolutely love, even though contrary to all the stereotypes of Texas. But Plano's a different story, right? And
I got sober in Fort Worth.
there you go. So, and I got sober in Dallas. Look at that. I love that. But there were two gay teachers at her school, one who was deeply in the closet and one who was out and proud. And this is in the, late 80s. So to be out and proud was a bold statement then, with a picture of his male partner on his desk. And she just observed that people were hypercritical and gossiping about the person who was deeply in the closet, but the person who was standing in his power, that wasn't happening, right? And I know that it's not always that simplistic, but there is something there, I think, to lean into. The more I know myself and the more I stand in my power and not my force, the more, love and acceptance I feel, not only from within, but also in the people around me. So I think that's really powerful.
That's right. You can't weaponize against me what I already claim.
Thank you. I'm about to write my fourth book, which is going to be a little bit of, diving into some stuff that a part of me would rather not acknowledge, but another part of me realizes the power of that story because it is part of my transformation. So,
Wow. Wow.
Kathleen, I love
Okay.
you. I adore you. I just,
Love you
I,
back.
I feel so full right now. Is there
Me too.
anything you want to say in closing to anyone watching or listening right now?
I don't know. I just love, like, these are the conversations that are transformative, right? And I love having these conversations. Thank you for inviting me into it. And I just want to go anytime, anywhere. Conversations like these elevate us. And for me, they just remind me, I don't, no matter what is happening, I could still be part of the transformation rather than the degradation.
Mm. Mm. I'm leaning in there.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, everyone. I know that this particular episode is one that you want to share. So go ahead and share, go ahead and like, go ahead and subscribe. And the reason I say that is not because I want more views, even though that's nice. It really is because I understand that Kathleen's message is one that is we're so thirsty for right now in the world. Even someone who may not realize it at a soul level, we're all really, truly wanting love and connection. So, Kathleen, thank you for being the presence
Yeah,
you are on planet Earth. I love you.
just
Thank you.
love you.
Thank you, everyone. Until next time,
Bye.
peace and blessings. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Element Q podcast. It's an honor to walk this path of healing and transformation with you. Remember, the courage and resilience of those who came before us live on in each of us. Let's continue to carry their legacy forward as we support one another in creating a world filled with love, gentleness, and empowerment. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building a brighter future, one story at a time. Until next time, I'm TJ Woodward, and this has been the Element Q podcast.